Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is the guide for the Nations Cup 2021 exhibition round 2. Let's get this started. Bring yourself to the left and your first braking point is just after the thin gray strip on the left starts. Use some of your braking power so you can slow down while still having the ability to turn. Bring yourself into the curves and slowly accelerate. Try to stay away from the grass on the left. Lift off of throttle as you make this right turn and brake just before the curb on the right ends. Brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes, nice and easy on the throttle, and try to keep your left wheels on the track. Do some more throttle control so you can bring yourself into the curbs and gently accelerate. For this left turn, you can do a lift off of throttle. And then for this right turn, do the same thing, lift off of throttle. You want to try to make sure that the car doesn't clip the grass. Then brake before the yellow area on the right ends, brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes and gently start to accelerate. Try to be smooth around that turn so you don't lose your momentum. Then stick to the right side of the track, and this is where it starts to get a little weird. This left turn can be taken flat out. This right turn can be taken flat out, but do a lift if your car is getting understeery. Then look for this brown area on the left, as that is your next braking point, and you want to use some of your braking power so you can slow down while still having the ability to turn. Take advantage of this area on the right. Keep your right wheels on this curb, doing lots of throttle control. Use some of your braking just before this right turn starts. Bring yourself into the curbs for extra rotation and carefully accelerate. Try not to get onto the grass. Yeah, so this part's pretty tricky. This next part is also tricky as well. So you want to start to brake before the curb on the left ends. Control your braking power, go out a bit wide, and then bring yourself in. Slowly ease off of the brakes. And then you want to be nice and gentle on the throttle so you can make sure that you lined up right besides the edge of the track. Stay towards the right side of the track, and your next braking point is before the 50-meter board, just after the gray area on the right starts. Brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes, don't go too far into the turn, gently accelerate, and then take advantage of the inside part of this track. Try to bring yourself towards the middle or the right and brake before the curb on the left ends. Brake hard for a short moment. Slowly ease off of the brakes, taking advantage of the yellow stuff. Then do lots of throttle control. Just try to get a nice clean exit. Keep the car nice and stable and you are good to go. But that's all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and take a look at the strategies. For this qualifying session, you only have 5 minutes to try to get a good qualifying time. First of all, check out this imposter using my livery in front of me. Anyways, he's a friend of mine. But going on to the strategies, so you only have 5 minutes to try to get the best qualifying time possible, which means that you're only going to have 2 chances to try to get a good lap time. So once you're out of the pit stops, you can either choose to haul butt and just try to get your lap times done with, or you can try to conserve your tires and try to maintain the tire grip, the tire life, so you can make the most out of it when you actually start to do your qualifying laps. The tire wear is a ×4, so depending on the car you're using, the tire wear isn't going to be much of an issue for the qualifying session. Is slipstream going to be useful here? Yes and no, and I'll get to that in a bit. So with the slipstream, you want to be within 3/4 of a second behind someone, and you'll be in the slipstream range. Your car will be able to accelerate faster, reach higher top speeds, but because you'll be going faster than usual, do get ready to brake a little bit earlier or ease off the throttle a bit earlier to compensate for the additional speed that you're entering through those turns. So if you are trying to get that good old slipstream, try to get behind someone before your first qualifying lap starts. So I say that a slipstream will and will not be useful because it'll be useful as you go up this hill through the back straight. It'll also be useful on the main straight and on the shorter back straight after the awkward section. Now I also say that slipstream will not be useful because of this whole sector 3 right here. This part is pretty complicated, so in your lobby there could be a chance that those who you're racing with might not know how to go through this part, or they might be going through it at a much slower speed. So if you know how to go through that part but someone in front of you doesn't, you might end up in the rear bumper and you end up getting slowed down, which will hurt your qualifying time. So you do want to be aware of that, and you do want to ask yourself whether it's worth the risk to try to shave off a couple of tenths by taking advantage of the slipstream, or just try to keep it safe and just qualify by yourself without anyone in front of you. And do try to be pretty clean when it comes to your qualifying laps, because if you start to mess up a lot, it's going to add up pretty quickly. So for example, with me, I messed up at a couple of turns. You saw me mess up just now, and that ended up hurting my qualifying time quite a bit. Now for the race session, we're doing 14 laps here at Lago Maggiore in reverse. We only have the racing medium tires, and we're doing this with the Group 3 cars. We are doing a standing start, so bring their traction control to 1, and shortly after the race starts, you can then bring it back down to 0, or whatever value you normally have it set to. You can also do the handbrake trick, where you hold on the handbrake, and when the lights go off, you simply just let go of the handbrake. And here is the thing. When it comes to this race, the cars that I'm going to talk to you about, they are good here at Lago Maggiore in reverse, but they all have the problem of being pretty bad when it comes to the standing starts. So the Renault, which is actually the fourth car I'll briefly mention, the Toyota FT1, the Mazda RX Vision, and the Volkswagen Beetle, they all don't have a good start, but their pace will really make up for it. And that is something that you do want to be careful about, because if you choose any one of these cars, you want to be aware that your car is not going to be good at the start, and you might end up losing a couple places at the very start. But the overall pace of these cars and the way that these cars treat their tires will make it worth it towards the end of the race. And going back to the start of the race, do be aware that people can and will try to sneak up on the right side of the track. So you see the Jaguar almost pull it off over here, but luckily I was able to get around them. So do be aware that people are going to try to sneak up through there, and if things get argy-bargy and if you're on the outside, you do risk getting pushed off the track. So do be careful about that. Now let's go ahead and talk about the strategies. This is pretty much a zero stop race. It's all about tire management and not using the RS01. The RS01, it has pretty bad tire wear, especially towards the rear tires, to the point where the car becomes nearly undrivable. And you'll be forced to pit if you use this car, and you're going to end up losing quite a bit of time. Because of the recent updates, the pit loss here used to be at around 5 seconds, in which in that case, pitting would have been a bit viable, but in this case, your pit loss is now 17.5 seconds, so you want to make sure that you do not pit at all, and you want to pick a car that has pretty good tire wear. So let's go back to the clip that I was showing earlier. We are in the Toyota FT1. This car does have a poor start, but its pace here makes up for it. This car is also really good on Sector 3 with the high-speed cornering. This car, it just demolishes that section. I had the brake balance at 0, and halfway through the race I moved the brake balance to +1, so 1 to the rear. And the tire wear isn't too bad, but it slowly does start to become an issue towards the later laps. So at around lap 10, if I recall, that's where you're going to notice that the tire wear is slowly starting to kick in. So that is when you want to start to be a little more careful, especially through this part right here. If you go through that part too fast, it is pretty easy to end up clipping the grass and end up ruining your own race. So you want to be careful about that, especially when the tire wear is kicking in. And do be especially careful here, because when the tire wear is really showing up, you end up going a little too wide, you clip a little bit of the grass, and you end up spinning around. And alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the next car, the Volkswagen Beetle Gr 3. Have the brake balance at 0, not -2, And you're going to notice this car also has a pretty bad start. This one, actually, I think it was worse than the FT1s because I'm already getting jumped by a Ferrari and a Corvette. But this car is also still pretty good here at Lago Maggiore. So this is more of a power car, so it is going to be going faster than the FT1, and it'll really shine when it comes to the higher speed sections, so the main straight, the back straight, and the shorter straight that is before the start finish line. And this car does do a pretty decent job when it comes to the high speed cornering, so on sector 3 it'll do the job just fine. But this car is a little understeery, so you might see yourself lifting off of throttle a bit more often to try to make sure that you don't end up running off track. And this car is also pretty stable, so if you're looking for a bit more stability, then this car might be the one that you're looking for. The tire wear is alright. It's a little similar to that of the Toyota FT1, where the tire wear slowly starts to kick in towards the later laps, so around laps 10 and on. So you do want to be careful about that, especially with how understeery this car is. Well, it's not too understeery, it's a little understeery, and it'll slowly get even more understeery as the tire wear kicks in. And let's skip on over to the end of the race. I got held up by a back marker that didn't ghost for some reason, and I also had the brake balance wrong in this race, so I had the brake balance at -1 for this race. Bring the brake balance to 0, and that should be good enough. You just want to make sure, for all cars that we're talking about here, just make sure that your tire wear is as even as possible. So if you notice that the front tires are wearing out faster, bring the brake balance a bit to the rear of the car. If the rear tires are wearing out a bit faster, bring the brake balance a bit towards the front of the car. And yeah, the Volkswagen Beetle is not good on the start, just like the Toyota FT1, but this car does have the pace when it comes to the higher speed sections. And finally, let's talk about the Mazda RX Vision. This car is also a bit sluggish when it comes to the start of the race, but once again, its pace and its tire wear will also make up for it towards the end of the race. I had the brake balance set to -2 and -3 for this particular race, but you just want to try to make sure that your tire wear is nice and even, so this value might change depending on your driving style. In this case, I was able to keep the tire wear nice and even, so -2 and -3 worked out for me. But anyways, this car, I want to say that this car almost drives like the Toyota FT1, except this car is slightly better because of the tire wear. So for those who don't know, this car recently got a BOP adjustment where it lost a little bit of power, but it also lost a ton of weight, and that weight reduction really helped it out with the tire wear to the point where tire wear is almost not a problem for this car. And you can see how dominant this car is. So for example, in the manufacturer race that happened just the other day, the Mazda RX Vision, it just walked away from everyone. And this car is also going to be pretty good here at Lago Maggiore because of its tire wear. It might not be as fast as the Beetle and the FT1, but this car, when it comes to tire wear, it's almost not a problem. So in my case for this race, the tire wear didn't really start to become much of a problem until lap 13, if I remember correctly. And the car is still pretty good to drive. It did slowly start to kick out a couple of times, but it was still pretty manageable. And we're going to go ahead and skip on over towards the end of the race. If you look on the bottom left hand corner of the screen, you can see how the tire wear is. It's not too bad, and when I was driving this car, it didn't feel too bad to drive, especially with that much tire wear in. And in this specific race, I don't think there was ever a single lap where I was 1 second slower than my best lap time. So I think my worst time compared to my best lap was around 8/10 slower, and that is with the tire wear kicking in. So that kind of says something about how good the tire wear is, to the point where it's almost not a problem. And in the time trials, it might not be as good, but in terms of race pace, this is where the car will start to shine, especially when it comes to the tire wear. So this race, I'm probably going to be picking this car, mostly because I know I'm not good with tire wear, and this car will probably save my hide. And let's go ahead and finally talk about places to overtake in the penalty serving zone. So main straight, it is possible to get an overtake done, but do try to make it fast and clean, because if you start to battle it out here through these first couple of turns, it is possible that you will end up losing a lot of time, especially with how these turns are almost back to back. And this part, or this track, it is pretty difficult to get the overtake done, so you want to pick your battles. Big Makey Boy, it is possible to get the overtake done if the car in front of you messes up leading up to this turn, but it is a bit more of a situational thing. The back straight, take advantage of the slipstream, and if the car in front of you messed up, you can definitely try to get the overtake done. Just try to do it before you start this left turn, because if you're starting to battle it out through here, you're really going to slow yourself down. This part does get narrow, so it is possible for an incident to happen. For the super awkward left turn or double left turn that is coming up, do be careful here as well. It is possible to get the overtake done, but it is possible for dive bombs to happen, so do be careful of that if anyone is near you. This is pretty much the perfect place to get any sort of overtaking done, especially if the car in front of you messes up. You can cut into the white area on the left, but the car does become a little unstable, so do be careful about that. And finally, you have this hairpin here. It is possible to try to get the overtake done leading up to the hairpin, but if you start to battle it out, you're going to lose out on a lot of time. So yeah, you really want to pick your battles, know when to overtake and know when to just hang back. And for those who didn't spot the penalty serving zone, it's hanging out after the double weird left-hander thing. It's on this short back straight, which is right here, and you won't lose too much time compared to serving a penalty on the back straight, but you still want to try your best to not get a penalty so you don't lose out on too much time and potentially too many positions. But anyways, that is pretty much it for this guide. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to testing more cars. I did want to test the RCZ, but unfortunately I couldn't get around to it. But hopefully this guide helps you out in getting to know the track and getting ready for the race. But that is all from me. Look at Tezar being a madman in the RSL1. But anyways, that's all from me. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is MrMCA wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.